I guess so. Shops in Northfields.
All right, after some technical difficulties, welcome everyone to the March meeting of Central Park United Neighbors. My name is Liz Stolniger. I am the board president for CPUN. And about Central Park United Neighbors, CPUN is the registered neighborhood organization, RNO, for the Central Park community. We provide a working forum for the residents of Central Park to participate in creating, developing, and fostering a vibrant urban community dedicated to social equity, environmental responsibility, and economic opportunity. At our meetings, we facilitate discussions of key issues with neighbors, engage in proactive problem prevention and amicable problem solving. And CPUN is committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment for all members of our community. Our mission is the betterment of the city of Denver by providing a forum for residents living in Central Park to discuss and resolve issues, a network of communication, a means of acting on matters of importance to the community as a whole. We promote public service, civic discourse, collective efficacy, and we're an all-volunteer board of Central Park residents and a registered 501c3 nonprofit. So we're going to start with our presentation tonight. Oh, sorry, I skipped over the agenda overview. So we'll start with our presentation on Metro Districts with Matt Blackburn and Jack Seward. Then we'll move on to community partner updates. We'll do committee report outs, treasurer's report, and then hopefully before 8 o'clock, do the community survey update, board recruitment update, and April look ahead for an early release from this meeting. So without further ado, Matt Blackburn and Jack Seward, who are both CPUN members and or board members for the Westerly Creek Metro District, will be giving us a presentation on the special districts in Central Park. So Matt and Jack, take it away.
Stop sharing.
I'm going to stop sharing right now.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, thanks everyone. My name is Jack Seward. I am the vice president of the Westerly Creek Metro District. And Blackburn is to my right. He is our treasurer. We're going to talk about special districts here in Central Park. What is a Title 32 special districts, how it works, and specifically how special districts with a focus on property taxes work here in Central Park. To understand, there we go. So first, to take us back in time to when the neighborhood looked like that, there was no, well, anything. It was dirt and concrete. And when the city decided that they were going to redevelop the old airport into today's neighborhood, the first challenge they had to overcome was how they were going to finance this undertaking, which would eventually become the largest urban infill here in the United States. And to do that, they recognized really quickly that the traditional municipal financing methods that had been used before were not going to cut it. And so I'm going to call it a scheme because that's what the paperwork calls it, but scheme sounds nefarious. So maybe we'll call it a setup. But it's not much better either. But anyways, the idea was that as the neighborhood was built, debt would have to be incurred to build the things, and then the users of the infrastructure that debt built would then pay off the debt over a series of years. That's the short version. So we know the history well, but it brought us to where we are today. What is a special district? Special districts are they're units of local government, which are regulated in this fine chapter of the Colorado Revised Statute, Title 32. If you get bored, need help sleeping at night, I'll let you borrow the book. You can read it. And essentially what it is it is a unique local government. It's called a quasi municipal corporation, so it's got tenets of a city or town, but it's also what's called a political subdivision of the state. So it's also got tenets of being a state agency. They hold elections and are governed by a five-member board of directors. Some of the larger districts have seven-member boards. But those electors are just like a city council person. They get elected from the service area or the area that the district serves. The guiding document that governs a special district is called a service plan. Much like the state has a constitution or the city has a charter, a special district has a service plan. That's these fun documents here. Again, have trouble sleeping at night, I got you. And so the first step is that a service plan was adopted, was adopted and drafted. That is done by the county commission. In Denver, the city council is also our county commission. So in 2000, the city county of Denver, they approved the special district service plans for both the Westerly Creek Metropolitan District. You're going to see that abbreviated here as WCMD, and the Park Creek Metropolitan District, which you'll see here abbreviated as PCMD. Then also in 2000, there was what was called an inclusion election. So essentially the property owners have to vote to include themselves into a special district. It worked out really well because there was only one property owner at the time, the city and county of Denver. And so the city held an election where they elected themselves to include into the district. They were then, once they formed, the Park Creek Metro District, which took on the role of being the what we'll call the servicing district, then began issuing municipal bonds and developer advances, essentially borrowing money to begin funding infrastructure development. Those two terms mean unique things. So a developer advance is essentially a loan that came from Forest City Enterprises to the district to begin work. Like we talked about on this slide, there was nothing here. There was no collateral on which you could borrow against. So Forest City essentially said that they were going to front a PCMD a bunch of money with the agreement that PCMD would then repay that money over a period of time. PCMD then used that money to begin infrastructure development. That money was then refinanced through the issuance of those municipal bonds, which have a relatively lower interest rate than a developer advance does. And that's kind of been the process we have used over the last 20 years. There's been construction of the public improvements. So when I talk about a public improvement, a metro district can't pay for anything that's private. So they're not building the homes or the apartment buildings or the commercial. What a metro district is building is roads, sewer lines, water pipes, street lights, bridges, traffic lights, all those really fun things that we need to make the world go round, but in the grand scheme of things, aren't actually that cool to the outside world. I think they're cool, but I'm a nerd like that. Then we started incurring debt. And as we started incurring debt, we needed a way to pay off that debt. That is where the Westerly Creek Metropolitan District joins the show. They are the taxing district. And so every property that is part of the Central Park community is also a part of the Westerly Creek Metropolitan District. And they pay an annual property tax assessment to the Westerly Creek Metropolitan District. It's probably the largest line item on your tax bill. What that is doing is 97% of that money that you're paying is being used for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to pay off the debt that has been incurred over the years. Once the debt is paid off, you stop paying 97% of your taxes. The other 3% of your taxes there is being used for operations and maintenance, and we'll get into the details on that. So another question I get often is how the heck that property taxing thing works. So I made a chart. You have the actual value of your property. That is the value that if you were ostensibly to sell your property tomorrow, what it would be worth. That is calculated by the county assessor. Then there's an assessment rate. That is a rate that is set by state law. So our friends at the Capitol go and put that and pass legislation. For a residential property, it's 6.7% of the and for a commercial property, it's 27.9%. You then take, so that's your assessment rate. So you're not, you then get your assessed value of your home. And this is a math, lots of math. So, if you're not a math person, I apologize now. But you take your actual value and you multiply it by your assessment rate. So you live in you own your home, that's a residential property. So you'll take the actual value of your home and you'll multiply it by 6.7%. Now you have your assessed evaluation. You pay taxes based on your assessed valuation. That's why you get two numbers on your taxes. One is the actual value, one is the assessed value. Why is the assessed value so much smaller? Because of the math formula that is getting you your assessed valuation. You then take your mill levy. What's a mill levy? I don't really know where that word came from, but the mill levy is a number that factors into this math formula that tells you how much money in taxes that you're going to pay. So 1 mil is 1/10 of a cent. So you then take your assessed valuation and you multiply it by your mills divided by 1,000. Clear as mud, right? No, it's not at all. So we have an example of a tax bill here. In this instance, the actual value of this property is $304,000. You multiply like 304,250 for Amanda, my math friend in the back there. You're going to take that and you multiply it by 6.7. It gets you $10,000. Matt and I chose this number because it makes the math a lot easier for purposes of demonstration. I don't think there's any property that actually has a $10,000 assessed valuation, but again, math is easy this way. You then see all the different taxes that you pay on your tax bill. So, and then you see that your levy, your mill levy, is then factored toward your assessed valuation, which gets your tax amount. So this property in our hypothetical scenario pays $4 to affordable housing, $26 to capital maintenance, and so far. For the Westerly Creek Metropolitan District, because their mill levy is 66.852, that puts an amount of about $669 or 46.32%. Now, the dollar amounts are going to change per property, but the percentages stay the same. So 46% of your tax bill is going to the Westerly Creek Metro District. The other biggest portion of your tax bill is Denver Public Schools, which is 35.13% of your tax bill, right? You add them all up, you get 100% and your total tax liability. So what do we do with the money that is collected? So there are 3 types of taxes that the Westerly Creek Metropolitan District collects. The first is a debt service mill levy. That is a tax that is specific to paying off the debt. It's the only thing it can get used for. It can't get used to build new things, can't get used to pay people. All it can be used for is to pay for debt. So, hold on, clicker stopped working. That's disappointing. There it is. Okay. 34.846 of your mills goes to the debt service. So that is the equivalent of about $62.8 million annually is collected to pay off that debt. Two and some change mills, or about $1.9 million, is used for that operations and maintenance. That is what is used to build new things or really repair broken things and pay people to do the repairing of the broken things. Steel is really expensive these days, so that $1.9 million gets eaten up really quickly. Then we have what's called specific ownership taxes. Those are taxes that you pay relative to registering your motor vehicles if you own a car. Westerly Creek gets about $3.9 million a year from the from the significant ownership tax, which brings us to our annual budget of about $69 about $69 million. There's a process called redemption, and there are people who don't pay, and so that's why it's about $69 million that they use. 97% of the total pie there is again just that debt service. So ostensibly, there will come a time when there is no longer debt to be paid off, and 97% of the taxes go away. When that time is, it's not anytime soon. But there will be a day when that debt service mill levy goes away. Are there any questions so far? Yes.
Why does Adams County collect and
So there are 300 properties in the Aurora portion of the neighborhood. Aurora sits in Adams County, not Denver County. So they collect that tax for us for just those 300 properties there in Aurora. Yes.
Yeah, for the specific ownership taxes on the vehicle registrations, is that only for vehicles that are registered within the Westerly Creek?
Yes.
So
If-
other parts of the city don't have that additional sort of
No.
assessment or tax?
No, so that's a good question. So what we do is there is a portion, everybody pays specific ownership tax on their vehicle, no matter where you live. But then the address to which that specific that vehicle is registered, then dictates where that revenue goes. So if you live, say, in another part of the city, a different recipient will be who gets that specific ownership tax. In some instances, it's the Denver Urban Renewal Authority. In other instances, it is the Mile High Flood Control District. It depends on where you are. That's part of that service plan we were talking about earlier. In our case, our service plan calls for us collecting that specific ownership tax.
Interesting.
It's the
Yes.
same amount no matter where you.
Got it. Okay.
It's not extra for Western
Yeah.
Creek.
No, you're right. That's set by the state, and it's just who gets to use that money. You have a question, Melissa?
Yeah, so Westerly Creek Metro District collects taxes. Is this addressed like later in the thing, just in terms of
What
the
do we do with
relationship?
the money?
Yeah, and also who decides on, because presumably like the term of the debt has kind of lengthened as the debt has been refinanced a couple of times over the years,
hasn't.
or,
So, yeah, we're gonna get to that.
okay,
So
because I was just wondering.
let's not jump the gun.
Okay,
We'll get to that. You ask a good question.
Right into the next.
Yeah, but so the 3% of the money that Westerly Creek uses, that Westerly Creek collects for operations and maintenance, that then flows, that pays for parks, pools, open space, public facilities, right? So, your pocket parks, your, stormwater system, and, the medians, the alleys, no, not the alleys, that doesn't pay for the alleys, I'm sorry. That pays for stormwater, it pays for medians, and it pays for some electrical infrastructure there. That flows, all of the money flows to the Park Creek Metro District, who then is as the servicing district is the one that does this, provides the services. So in total, since we started the project, we have raised about $800 million in debt. As of the end of 2024, about $600 million of that debt remains outstanding, right? I got that under my mattress. I'll write a check, solve the problem. No, that's not how that works. A question that I get asked often though is what has all that money paid for? And it's not an insignificant amount of stuff, right? 1,300 acres of parks, 90 miles of road, $1.2 million, million feet of curb and gutter, 600,000 feet of sewer lines, water lines. We planted 17,000 trees. And we, have our 16 public art installations. And then a portion of that too has also funded the construction of schools. Not all the schools. Denver Public Schools actually foots the bill for most of that, but a portion of that money has also paid for schools. So that's what we've gotten for about $800 million. And so the process is that Westerly Creek collects that revenue, and then they flow that revenue over to PCMD. 97% of it goes to pay off the debt. Only thing it can be used for. That leaves 3% that gets used to pay to maintain the things. The MCA has contracted with the Park Creek Metropolitan District to do the maintaining of the things. And there are some things that the Park Creek District uses that 3% to pay for and reimburses the MCA for their costs related to those maintenance and operation responsibilities. There are then things which the Park Creek Metro District owns that the MCA maintains and the MCA funds the maintenance of. That's your HOA dues that you pay each month. So there is a split between what Park Creek owns and is paying for, what the city owns, but Park Creek pays for, and what Park Creek owns and the MCA pays for. I have a really big spreadsheet that breaks it all down. And again, if you're tired at night and need help sleeping, I'm more than happy to send you and you can dig into. But that's in a nutshell how that process works. Amanda.
So, given that the amount that comes in every year is going to be variable as the assessment changes or when the assessed value, that'll be impacted. How is the split between 97% and 3% fixed? Is it that the MCA, Park Creek Metro District always gets 3% and then the 97% flex to pay down more debt? Or does the 97% to pay down debt always stay the same? And
So-
like what happens when there's surplus?
Right, so it's still based on that mill levy. So the money, the mill levy doesn't change, that stays the same. But what does change is the assessed valuation. So 64.846 of the mills using, our fun calculation here of what a mill is and how we get to that, right? 64.86 of them, or about 97%, goes to pay down debt. So of your total tax pie that the Westerly Creek collects, 97% goes to debt. 3% goes to operations and maintenance, and it's of the total amount. So if last year I collected $100, $97 would go to debt and $3 would go to operations and maintenance. If this year I collect $200, then again, 97% of 200 goes to debt and 3% of 200 goes to operations and maintenance. I should be able to do that kind of math in my head, but I drew a blank right there.
No,
Yes.
it's variable. It's based on whatever comes in. It's just a percentage.
Correct.
This is the amount that is charged to pay down debt.
No, it's based on whatever comes in. And what we've seen over the last 2 years, 2-3 years, is we've seen a surge in property value, which has meant a surge in revenue. That surge in revenue has been used to accelerate the pay down of the debt. The thought process being getting out of debt sooner is better than staying in debt longer. Under state law, the alternative could be you just meet your minimum payment obligation and you refund the rest. The decision the Park Creek board has made, it's not the board Matt and I are on, different board, different people. The decision that board made was that we would rather accelerate pay down of the debt.
There's a question in the chat that I just wanted to address and then Chris.
That is the current projection. Yeah,
The current purchase,
they vary across the bonds. But in the documents I sent is the 2024 finance plan from Park Creek, and you can see all the maturities and the interest rates on each one of those bond issues.
the current plan, again, the year end 2024. Granted, the market has changed just since then, but as of 2024, the expected final retirement of debt is in 2034, so about a 10-year term. The absolute drop dead date when everything has to be paid for, all the bonds are callable, you gotta have paid it all, is 2051. I will actually be very old by then. And for some people that are older than me, like my boss Kevin, he jokes he will be dead by then. Our goal is that it does not take us until 2051 to pay down all of the debt. We project that to be more likely in the 10 to 15-year sphere instead of the 25 to 30-year sphere.
The
Yes.
question that's in the chat is related to that. So it's just, what would happen to the debt service payments if property assessed values decrease? And I'd like to add on to that. Does anybody know when the next assessment year is? Because I think
It's an assessment for now.
it is, okay.
So this year is your reassessment year. So your tax bill that's due in April is for your assessed value from last year. They'll reassess your properties this year and then in 2026. So they don't like to assess properties in election years, is the understanding I've gotten. So odd years are assessment years because even years are election years. That's the way somebody explained it to me. And so next year, we will start paying based off of this year's assessment. Answer the last part of your question first. The first part of your question is if there is less revenue, that means you are making smaller payments. And if you are making smaller payments, it takes you longer to pay off the debt.
And I'll just say a couple of things to that. So they did in the finance plan, they did project if the accelerated pay down by 2034 is assuming that property values continue to increase, probably not as much as historically they have or potentially could, but they are projecting a continued annual or biannual increase in property values. But to issue the debt, the amount of revenue has to so far exceed the amount of the payments that even if there were a decrease in property values, there would still be enough revenue to pay down the debt and just meet the minimum maturity, I guess would be the worst case scenario. And in that case, I think 2051 is the deadline that the city said that there can't be any debts issued with a maturity beyond 2051 for this project. And there will be another debt issue in 2025. And I don't know what the terms of that are going to be, but the final maturity isn't going to be later than 2051. I hope that answers the questions.
So the short answer is, to answer your first question, if property value goes down and we see less revenue, worst case scenario, debt will be paid off by 2051 because that is how the debt was structured, that the taxes were levied in such a way that no matter what the market does, they will still be able to make payments and pay off that debt by 2051. That is because the city, that was essentially a stipulation the city made the districts make, is to say, anything that you do, essentially, we think 50 years is enough time for you to be in debt. So do whatever financial calculations you need to do, but figure out how to get it done in 50 years. It's what the city told us way back in the day. And that is what holds true to today. Go ahead, Heather.
Once all the debt is paid off, you'll still, like, the Metro District will still exist to collect whatever that 3% or those mills are for maintenance.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
So move on because you got like
So we have just a couple more minutes on.
Well, that's good because this was the bulk of the slide. So then the other thing that you pay is, of course, your MCA dues each month. Then that pays for, again, some of the properties get paid for out of this pot of money. Some properties get paid for out of the other pot of money. It really depends on the property. If you have a specific property in mind, I can answer that question for you. Relationships, we've kind of talked about this already. And then there are a bunch of additional sources of funding. The one that I'll point to here is the Community Investment Fund, which is collected at the time of property transfer. So when you sell a property, 1/4 of 1% of the total property transaction value is then remitted to the Community Investment Fund, which is the main funding mechanism for the Foundation for Sustainable Urban Communities and funds the work that they do. So the long-term plan here is that when all the public debt obligations are satisfied, then Park Creek will transfer all of its owned assets to Westerly Creek. Park Creek dissolves and goes away, and then Westerly Creek continues on in perpetuity as one consolidated metropolitan district.
And that 3% will be maintained as well.
at 3%, yeah, so that stays forever unless the voters choose to change it. That's a Tabor mechanism there, so anytime we want to change that mill levy, we gotta go to the voters. The voters could go to the ballot and get rid of it if they wanted to. I would tell them that would be a really dumb idea because the roads would stop getting plowed in the winter. But that would be a decision that the voters could make, but as it stands now, that lives on in perpetuity. So that is websites. We'll share these with everybody and contact information. And then you can get all the documents we referenced are on the Westerly Creek's Metro District's webpage. Other questions? Otherwise, I think I've already run out of time. No, I did pretty good. I'm only 1 minute over.
No, and I think you actually had a few.
I had a couple minutes buffer. I do want to just say, like, this is, I mean, it can be kind of like a fairly dry topic, but I feel like this is something that is unique to our neighborhood that people generally don't know about or understand at all. So I really appreciate this presentation. I actually have a question for Jesse, just about in terms of like Metro Districts as a financing scheme or, you know, whatever, for large infill developments. We have the ball arena. Is that also financed by Metro Districts, or how, I guess, what is the financing structure for developments going forward?
Yeah, so for Ball Arena specifically, there are going to be Metro Districts to finance the Ball Arena redevelopment, paid for by sort of that downtown area is the boundaries of the Metro District. As far as that go, if you can make the math square and you can get people to buy in to vote for them and vote for the creation of them, they work pretty well. I mean, I think that, you know, subject to property valuation, like fluctuation, you sort of have a degree of certainty to when they're going to be paid off. So they can work. I think the bigger problem is that Metro Districts are not always transparent against sort of what you're paying just in terms of like city property taxes. And so the issue is really the interplay between Metro Districts and the city governments are not always, they're not always transparent. And so I think it leads to a lot of confusion, but in terms of like the actual financing, they make sense for a state that has the restrictions that Tabor places on local governments.
Again, clear as mud right there. But I mean, the reason why the Metro District is appealing to developers is that a Metro District enables you to earn a bond rating that is just not one that you can get on the private market. And also the bonds then become tax exempt, because essentially what the collateral of the bonds is a tax. And, you know, you essentially go to the bondholders and you say, as collateral, I am pledging a voter approved tax that will last for this many years. And the bond issuers are like, that's about as secure of a financing strategy as you can get, because it's really hard to default on the taxes that are required to be paid. Like you can't get better than that. And then also making bonds tax exempt, it comes with a condition that the things that those bonds build have to be for a public purpose, but it makes the bonds cheaper. And so again, another appealing incentive for a developer.
And one last point, I'm not quite sure if it was brought out in the presentation, but you know, most of the assets are transferred to the city of Denver for maintenance and long-term ownership. It's only, like Jack pointed out, those handful of pocket parks, medians, pools, and a few other things that are being maintained by the district. So when we say that remaining district assets are conveyed to Westerly Creek, that means that the majority of things are transferred to the city and county of Denver.
I think that the part of the neighborhood where confusion between what's PCMD owned and what is city owned is the north end right now. I know that the Safe Streets Committee has kind of run into that.
Still in a transitional phase.
So, I mean, every part of the neighborhood had that problem at some point.
Yeah,
It's just, we didn't have the density that we had early on, but essentially Forest City builds everything. And then and then the property gets transferred from Forest City to Park Creek. Park Creek then has a 2-year maintenance obligation on everything. It's a warranty essentially. So for the first 2 years, Park Creek is warrantying, again, using those taxpayer dollars, that they'll fix the problems. At the end of that warranty period, it then either gets retained by Park Creek until one day it'll go to Westerly Creek, or it goes to the city. We have run into some serious complications getting properties transferred from Park Creek to the city. The short answer is that the city attorney, we got a new city attorney who has interpreted the original contract for how that process is supposed to go differently than the old city attorney did. And so essentially the goalposts got changed, and so they had to start the process over. Then, as they got through the process, another city attorney took over and the goalpost changed again. And so it's some bureaucratic back and forth. There's litigation over one of the parcels that's ongoing, and long story short, we're working through those problems. Nothing will bring me more joy than when I can give the streets around Northfield High School to the city and they can be the city's problem. I'll retire. But that,
It won't take
Has-
that long.
or I'll retire really early, but it's been a 3-year process and we still do not even see a light at the end of that tunnel.
I want to, before we get to Amanda, let Helen ask the same question again. What happens if the debt's not paid off by 2051? It definitely will be, because you could not issue, we're not like just meeting the payments, to issue the debt that matures in 2051. We had to have enough revenue to exceed that by a factor of, I don't know, 8 to 10 or more. So it will definitely all be paid off by 2051, even if property, and I guess hypothetically, property values could completely collapse, but that's still factored into the payoff will definitely happen no later than 2051.
And there are like mandatory restructuring guidelines built into those bonds as well. So if property values dip below a certain point, then the bondholders have to consent to a restructuring of the debt. I'm not a bond attorney, so I don't dare try to understand how any of that stuff works. But there were a whole bunch of lawyers involved in this process to ensure that that happens.
And the mill levy will go on until all that debt gets paid off.
When the management of land is extended for multiple years, presumably that increases the operating costs that Park Creek has to pay, like for the streets around Northfield. How is that then, that burdens us with more debt because we can't pay down the debt as fast as we could had the city taken the land back, right?
No, they pay for that out of their operations and maintenance fund.
Sure, but because that's a higher cost for operations, the operations cost would have been lower if they hadn't had to pay to maintain that for the 3 years that the city should have owned it.
Yeah, and the other thing that the city did is the city's charging the Park Creek Metro District a stormwater drainage fee on a piece of property that the city was supposed to own 3 years ago. So Park Creek is paying the city about $300,000 a year that, well, honestly, they shouldn't be. And so the Park Creek board decided that they just weren't going to pay it. And so the city slapped a lien on the property. And so now the city won't accept the property because it doesn't have a clean title. And so I told the city the other day, foreclose on the property, and I left the meeting. And so again, we are working through those issues. I was not invited back to a meeting with the city after I made that comment, but you're right. There is an increased burden to the taxpayer because the city is unwilling or unable, I'm going with unwilling, to accept assets that they should have years ago.
Who is advocating for us in the city?
So I can speak to at least part of the issue around Northfield High School. One of our staffers, Bree, is working on basically advocating for the neighborhood as well as, like, especially with regard to a lot of the traffic issues that we're seeing as a result of this sort of gap between the handover between the city asset and the Metro District. And so we do have somebody who's actively working on it. She's in meetings every week with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, and we've also had several meetings with the city attorney. So we are working in various ways to try to get this thing worked out, because again, to your point, it is increasing operational costs, but it's also making things less safe than they would be otherwise. Because if the city owned it outright, we could just change the sort of, we could improve traffic conditions around Northfield High School and make it safer. And so this is something that our office is working on to address.
Shannon Giffords is the city's deputy chief projects officer, and she has been involved in the project since the very beginning, and has also gone to bat with us on a number of things. I think the holdup right now is actually over their stormwater drainage fees, and the city would like to see their money, and Park Creek would very much not like to give them more money than they have to, and so they're kind of at this moment in the stare down to see who will blink first. And like I said, neither Matt or I serve on that board, and they talk about those things in executive session, which we're not invited to. So we can't provide more insight other than Park Creek has their position, the city has their position. Regardless of how, much wisdom is in either party's position, they are working through it the way that they work through things. Now I'm really out of time. Like now I really.
Out of time. We do need to, I feel like this kind of segues us into community partner updates. But something I just kind of one observation that I wanna make is that I'm assuming those attorneys' fees are also coming out of our Metro District
Indeed.
things. So yeah, so we all are paying for it.
That'd be the operations side of
Yeah,
the equation, but yes.
yes. Okay. All right. So we have Jesse here from Councilwoman Lewis's office. So if you'd like to start and I'll get presentation back.
Yeah, so a couple of quick updates. We are in the first part of the mayor's vibrant bond package. You probably saw something in the news about it. Basically, every 5 years or so, the city can do a new round of bond projects. These are based off of a 5-year infrastructure plan. All of these city agencies sort of put projects into it, and then the City Department of Finance collates all of that and then goes to the voters and asks to basically raise a bond package. Because of Tabor, all the voters have to agree on it in November. We're at the end of the old CIP and we're creating the new one. And so as part of that, public engagement is a huge part of it. In addition to the agencies who are able to submit projects, the public is also able to get projects on there, onto those infrastructure project lists. And so we are holding a bond meeting with the mayor's office Wednesday, April 2nd at 5:15. And basically what we're going to be doing in that project, in that meeting, is there'll be sort of an overview of the city bond process generally. And then there'll be sort of breakouts for panelists to discuss specific projects that they may have in mind. I don't really have time to dig all the way into the bond process here, but I will say a couple of things. One, it's not necessary that your bond project be ready to construct immediately. If you have an idea for it, we can get it on there, and then the bond project will fund the design phase of the specific project you have. So it doesn't need to be super developed in order to get on there. And then two, if you think back to Jack's presentation just now, that was super helpful on the mill, on the discussion of the mill levies. There was the breakout for the city bond fund. The amount that I saw was basically $15 against the $10,000 assessment. Basically, that's not going to change with this new bond package because the bonds are paid off every 5 years. So if you guys don't approve if the voters don't approve the new bond package, basically you would be paying $15 less on that assessment. But if you do approve it, you'd still be paying $15. So there wouldn't be a change in your property tax assessment. So that's number one. Number two, Councilwoman Lewis has been working with the mayor's office to basically work on what's going to happen to the Quebec corridor after the All-in Mile High program comes to an end. That corridor is very it basically cuts the district in half, and it creates this sort of huge moat between Northeast Park Hill as well as Central Park. Obviously, there's other issues with the shelter corridor as well as the sort of allowable uses within that shelter corridor currently. And so the councilman is really conscious of wanting to better integrate that corridor as the program winds down, as well as making sure that the corridor is serving its purpose while the All in Mile High program currently exists. To that end, she wants to create a task force. This will include the mayor's office. It will include the Office of Housing Stability and members from the community from both Northeast Park Hill as well as Central Park. To that end, we are having a kickoff meeting at MLK Rec Center at 5:30. We'll sort of go more into the process, sort of the vision for what this is going to look like. And then the other thing that the councilman really wants to come from this task force is recommendations that will be implemented by the mayor's office as well as the various city agencies to ensure that, it's not just a bunch of people meeting and then they talk and then nothing happens. So all of that will be sort of talked about at this meeting on April 3rd at 5:30 at MLK. I recommend that you attend. And then that is it for my announcements. I did have one more piece about the bond projects for Central Park specifically. This was a request made by the Safe Streets Committee. In the last bond package, there was money allocated for upgrades to MLK and Central Park, the intersection, because it's horrible. And I do have a couple of updates from Maggie Thompson, who is the Dottie community designer. That project is currently slated in the design phase. It has about $100,000 of design money that has been allocated. And the question from the Safe Streets Committee was whether or not additional funding would be needed from the Vibrant Bond to fund the actual construction improvements. The answer that Maggie gave me is basically there are 2 tickets for signal timing and equipment replacement, and then actual sort of repainting and repaving and some of the traffic changes. And those tickets, as far as she understands it at this moment, do not require Vibrant Bond money. The last tranche of the Elevate Denver bonds, which was the last bond project, should fund the construction phase of that project. She didn't have a time frame for that, based on the fact that all of the Elevate money is going to be running out by the end of 2026. I would expect it to happen soon, but I can stay in touch with Safe Streets and give more updates as they become more apparent. The other thing I will say is that our office, this is one of the projects that we're monitoring pretty closely, because we know it has been a huge process to get anything done on this intersection. And so if the answer comes back in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month or whatever, that actually more bond funding is required, it's going to be one of the councilwoman's priorities. And those priorities are given credence by Department of Finance when it comes time to actually sort of weigh the various bond projects on the infrastructure project. So we are committed to seeing that through. That is it for my announcements.
There's one question in the chat just about Central Park Boulevard and Northfield Boulevard, but I think that wasn't part of at least the bond.
No, it's not for this one. I do know that there are further questions about if it's Northfield and Central Park. That would be one that I would say bring it to the bond meeting on April 2nd if possible.
All right, thank you. All right, and I see we have Director Quattlebaum from the DPS board. So thanks for joining us. If you'd like to give us an update from the school board.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I just really want to take an opportunity to invite everyone out tomorrow evening to the District 4 Community Engagement Meeting at McAuliffe International Middle School at 5:30, and that'll be 5:30 to 8:30. And you will get to meet and learn a little more about myself, Director Esserman, and Mr. Youngquist. The 3 of us will be introducing ourselves formally to the community. We will also be working on EL 19 or Executive Limitation 19, which is a policy that will give direction to the superintendent to not just create school enrollment boundaries, but also what does that cadence look like for reviewing it. And we're really excited about having community input. So we will have a breakout session in tomorrow's meeting where the community will have an opportunity to see the proposed language of the policy, as well as make recommendations to that language. I will also be giving updates on things that are happening in DPS. So a little bit of financial updates, updates around changes that are happening on the federal level, and they're happening every day. And I will be giving updates on what potential impacts that has for Denver Public Schools, our students, and our family and community at large. That's it.
That policy in advance of attending the meeting to better prepare comments?
So I cannot give it to you in advance because I'm not the author of it. I'm excuse me. But we will have it there, and it's a complete work session that we'll be doing. And I want to let you know that tomorrow will not be the only opportunity to provide recommendations for the policy. It's ongoing until we actually vote it into we actually voted in as a policy. So right now it's in draft. We have not done a first read on it, which simply means we're formally presenting it, or Director Esserman would formally present it to the rest of the directors. And then we decide if we want to begin go through the process of adopting it into a formal policy. So this is just the first step. And so far, I think District 4, I know, we are the last community meeting. So I don't know what changes, if any, the other 4 district community engagement meetings have yielded. So I would not have that updated language if there is any updated language.
I have one question. When have school board members announced whether they'll be running for re-election later this year, or what's the timetable for that expectation?
Well, I'm not sure if anyone has announced if they will be running again. And the timetable, the actual timetable would be August, late August, early September, when you're collecting signatures to go on the ballot. Because at that point, no one can enter the race once names are submitted for the ballot.
I guess I have just one question. Are is the school board involved in the action that's happening at the Capitol on Thursday? That it's the Colorado teachers and students will be rallying for educational funding.
Can you clarify?
I was just wondering if you or any of the board members are also going to be participating in the rally that's happening on Thursday.
There may be some directors participating in the rally. I support educators, but I will be at my daytime job.
Okay, all right. We just have a couple of schools that are closed here in the neighborhood on Thursday for that, so I was curious. All right, thank you.
Yeah, so there could be some board members there. No one has communicated to me if they plan on to attend, but I know that I will not be able to. And the superintendent has been aware of this. This is a state and national stand with our classroom teachers initiative.
Yes, Director Quattlebaum. And we can move on to, I think we have Lieutenant Hines and Technician Ferenc on the line for DPD.
Yep, I'm here. Sorry, I'm trying to get myself unmuted. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, do you have any slides to share, Lieutenant Hines, or?
No, don't have any slides, just some talking points tonight. So for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Kevin Hines. I'm the lieutenant for the Central Park neighborhood in District 5. Central Park's divided into two police districts. 511 is the precinct north of I-70 and 512 is a precinct south of I-70. Before I run through a couple of crime statistics, one thing I wanted to touch on tonight was some concerns that some residents had brought to my attention or questioned me about anyway, regarding addresses in the North End neighborhood. There were some concerns among residents that those locations are not geocoded as part of Denver and that they're not in our CAD system. Dispatch doesn't know how to dispatch there, things of that nature. Basically, some residents were concerned that they weren't going to be able to get emergency services there if they needed them. I do believe when that neighborhood was first being built, there was initially a couple of issues where calls were being sent to Adams County instead of Denver. I'm told that those have all been resolved. Our dispatch center said that they have all the addresses in there. They're geocoding properly as Denver. They're on our Denver maps. One concern a resident had was that they don't show up on our MDT maps in our vehicles. That's actually an issue of the vehicles requiring a physical update where a technician has to come out and address that computer on an individual basis. However, we're not reliant on those maps in our vehicle. Those are just an extra tool we have available. But if you live in the North End and you call 911, you will be able to get service from a Denver police officer, Denver fire, paramedics. The one thing I will mention though is, and this is true anywhere in the city or elsewhere in the region, if you are near a district boundary and you call 911 from a cell phone and your cell phone picks up on a tower that's outside of the city and county of Denver, it is possible your call could initially go to dispatch in another county, but they'll transfer it over to our dispatch. But for anybody who had those concerns, I just wanted to clear that up so you're aware that we do have the North End covered. Trying to be respectful of everyone's time here. I'll just go through a couple of crime statistics. I know somebody asked me about the fact that over the last 28 days, Precinct 511 had a jump in violent crime that appears statistically significant on paper. It's a 92% increase for the last 28 days. I caution anybody, though, looking at those numbers that the reality is there's not a lot of violent crime there, so any small spikes will make a big impact on the bottom line. In this instance, the spike was in aggravated assault firearm cases. We had two incidents. Each were cases where a juvenile menaced another group of juveniles with a weapon. And in each instance, there were 5 victims available. So we count on the basis of victims, not incidents. So those 2 incidents generated 10 victims on paper, and that was largely responsible for the rise in violent crime that you may see. I know we've already made 1 arrest in one of those cases, and I think the other one's also approaching that kind of position. So overall, though, violent crime still only 13% of the total crime in that precinct. We are trending great on auto theft and theft from motor vehicle this year. Both of those are down about 58% in precinct 511. And we're still looking at a year-to-date change of a reduction of 32% in burglaries. So overall, total crime in precinct 511 is down 29% year-to-date. Taking a look at precinct 512, again, area south of I-70, violent crimes down 33.8% year-to-date. Total crimes down 28.3%. We're also seeing those gains again in auto theft, theft from motor vehicle, all the vehicle related crimes that were really plaguing us a year ago. Um, Violent crime's about 10% of the total crime in that precinct. And the main driver of violent crime is simple assault. So that could be pushing, shoving somebody, somebody hitting somebody, a fight, things of that nature. But basically, no weapons involved, no serious injury kind of assaults. One thing I wanted to do here before we go tonight is I wanted to introduce a guest from our team who's on the call tonight. Pearl Lopez is our new Community Engagement Program Manager for District 5. She has been with the city for a while now, but is taking over a role that some of you may be familiar with, Megan Patrick, who previously starred in that role for us here in District 5. She'll be working with our CROs pretty closely and hopefully helping us to find ways to get more engaged with those of you here in our community. The only other thing I wanted to do is throw this over to Technician Ferenz for any updates she may have as well.
Good evening, everybody. The only thing I wanted to add was this Thursday, we do have our commanders meeting. That's going to be 6 p.m. in person at our District 5 station at 12025 East 45th Avenue, and also available virtual. I did put that link in the chat for everybody to share, but as of right now, that is the only update I have.
And from our side, Pearl, I don't know if you're on and wanted to unmute and say hi, or if you had anything to add. Just wanted to introduce you, though I know you were going to be listening in tonight.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. Nice to meet everybody. I look forward to meeting you again. This is the first meeting, so nice to meet everybody, and I'm learning a lot, so thanks for sharing.
Welcome to the
Nope.
district. Okay, all right, thank you. DPD, we can move on to, I think the MCA,
You know,
Diane?
I will bring information next month so that you can keep rolling,
Okay, great.
because everything I have is about next month. So
Oh, okay,
I'll bring it to next month.
wonderful. And I think actually, I don't see Daria, for the Sam Gary branch on, I don't know if there's anybody else, just really quickly, if there's anybody else on the Zoom who's representing the public library with any updates. Otherwise, I can move on to Love Lake, which Layla is not able to join us tonight, but she did just send some quick updates since they broke ground on the construction. So just that the campus improvement projects broke ground. There is a challenge gift of $500,000 if they can reach 1,000 donors. And she said they're about a third of the way there. So I'll share this link if anybody would like to donate in the chat and also in our newsletter that goes out on Monday. And then also she sent the site access map, which just shows where the entrances are. So I guess the site access during construction is here. It doesn't actually say which one is the entrance, but I'm assuming it's the one on Havana is the entrance, while the MLK entrance is closed for the construction project. So I'll also send that information out to folks in the newsletter. And so for now, we're done with community partner updates. We have our committee report outs. Do people want to move straight into that or take a couple of minutes? I guess if folks just want to like stretch their legs, or what were you gonna say, Carol?
Nothing.
Okay,
Good.
all right, great. So folks, like get up, move around if you need to, but let's just keep moving ahead with the agenda. Thank you for everybody who joined us. We'll start, Carol, with education.
Oh, sure. We are now having bi-monthly meetings. So our next meeting is in April at 5:30 on the 9th. And we find ourselves overlapping, collaborating with other CPUN committees more and more. And we certainly are doing it with health and safety, and because there are school safety issues with Safe Streets as well. And it just seems to me to be a natural sort of thing to be collaborating with our other committees. We're going to be using the survey results once we have everything as guidance for some things that we'll be focusing on. And we see more and more our agenda, our focus, our purpose as coordinating volunteer activities in numerous capacities in various schools. And finding that probably the best thing to do is, when we can, is to collaborate with PTAs, PTOs, but not school staff because they are taxed far beyond. You know, we just shouldn't be expecting them to do that. So, yeah, I think that that takes care of it. And I think that, are you going to speak to that, Amanda, about, I mean, and that's a natural one with the meeting we had yesterday with the Colorado Public Health folks. So, yeah.
Do you want to join us? over
And that's kind of a natural segue to you.
Yeah, we can, health and safety.
Just a quick, I went to Northfield this morning with my husband and we're considering next semester being mentors for Northfield High School's incubator program.
Right.
It's like Shark Tank. It's so cool. So today we just wanted to see what it was all about and listen to the interim presentations before they do the final presentations. So these are groups of like 3 to 4 kids. So impressive, so inspiring, gives me hope for the future. I'm bringing it up because one of the team's projects is actually a volunteer app that allows the Northfield students to get matched to organizations in the neighborhood surrounds to meet their requirement of 30 hours of volunteer hours. And I just thought there was some cool things there. So
Well,
I'm secretly hoping for them that they
Well,
win.
you and I and the committee will be talking.
Yeah, I just thought that was great. Just
on our
you know, for
agenda.
what we're trying to do to get community members volunteering with schools, but here are the kids actually looking for volunteering opportunities.
Excellent.
So I just thought it was some cool synergy. So good things happening.
Then I guess we'll kind of hopscotch over to health and safety and education, if you want to talk about the meeting yesterday, Amanda.
Sure. 4 of us met with Maya Apolino, who works for a marketing consulting firm that's been contracted by the Colorado School of Public Health. So we received an email from them asking to partner with, expressing their interest to partner with community organizations. So we set up this meeting. And so the content of the meeting was the program, the tea, like the beverage tea on THC, and their efforts to roll out a campaign. And it felt like a very early conversation, I guess, to just establish a relationship with us. They did not come with a list of asks and a plan. It was more just
So are you?
a couple of minutes on a Zoom call together. And so you emailed afterwards whether we talked about like stigma and
Yeah, I was just wondering,
that-
like, if they talked about like balancing education, like without messages that kind of reinforce stigma.
yeah, so the focus of that campaign is going to be pregnant women and children.
Okay.
So not on just the average recreational user. But I don't think she specifically said that they weren't going to target, like, because there are exceptions for children getting medicinal licenses in cases of like epilepsy, like that didn't come up at all when she was talking about children. So there's,
Well, let's define beyond children because it was 25 and up. It was about brain development.
right, sure.
Right.
So
Do you have a list of questions following that meeting then to send? Like
she had follow-up items she was supposed to send
Yeah.
us
Right.
a response about, and I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
Presumably I will.
Yes. Yeah, it's just interesting because it felt like I came into the meeting extremely late, but it did seem like a pretty preliminary conversation. But Carol was mentioning you've seen their flyers, like they
Well,
have rolled out.
I don't-
Oh, it's somebody else.
No,
Oh,
right,
okay. Got
right.
it.
And they've been up at Central Park Rec Center for quite a while.
Okay,
The things that I've seen, and then you mentioned, Heather,
I've seen it
seeing
at the Davis.
and another rec center as well, so.
It's not the same campaign.
I
Oh, I'm
didn't think it was.
curious
I didn't think
like-
it was.
the other campaign is. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so if,
Like,
I guess their bottom line or, I don't, one of their asks is for us to push out information that either comes from the School of Public Health or, the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment whenever they sort of do their actual launch, which maybe hasn't happened yet. And so I think at that point, when we see what they actually want, we could check in again just as a group.
Letter or
Or talk about
during
it,
a
yeah.
meeting, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, no, that's really helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, yep, Safe Streets.
yeah.
You, Carol.
Amy isn't here. Amy is the co-chair with me with Safe Streets, and I pretty much Jesse helped out. I mean, he sort of responded to a question that we had about the follow-up with Maggie. So I appreciated that. And I wasn't able to be there, but Amy had our quarterly meeting with Maggie Thompson from Dottie in late February, and we're putting everything into the newsletters in terms of the meeting minutes, and then the meeting that we had with Maggie, and that is very helpful. And I wanted to just do a shout out to Matt, because he, right after Safe Streets, our last Safe Streets meeting in February, he did a great kind of, these are the points that we talked about, and these are our objectives, and these are what the important points that we really want to follow through on. So I appreciate that. And so I think that's pretty much about it. And I want to make sure that there's time for, well, are we doing another one that David gets to speak about the INC meeting and something?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot to put the INC
Yeah.
bullet point on there.
No, we're-
Can I just really quickly
Please.
do the
There
DEI
you go.
committee, because we have, so the next meeting for the DEI committee is next Tuesday, March 25th, and it will primarily, the agenda for that is just planning what the state capitol day will the format of that will look like. Kathy Aubert, who might be on the call right now, who's joined that committee, is doing some of the research. She says hello in the chat. We'll be doing some research on just kind of like some of the outstanding issues that are going to be are working their way through the state capitol right now. I think that the budgeting issue around education statewide, but also looking at what bills Senator Coleman and Reps Gilchrist and Bacon have sponsored and co-sponsored, and then also kind of their votes in their committees or on key issues. So that's basically, if you're interested in those issues, come to the DEI committee meeting on Zoom next Tuesday, 6 to 7 p.m. And there's also just, if folks can't make it to the state capitol day, but are interested in this, Senate President Coleman and Representative Gilchrist are holding a town hall on March 29th. I have to go back and look up the location, but they will be holding a town hall for constituents. And I think, and Jamie added in the chat, professors collective bargaining rights. So we'll be discussing kind of what that event will look like, but I think part of it is just it's kind of like a civic engagement 101 for us to kind of start like paying attention to and engaging in the policy work that's happening at the state level, since we hear a lot about the local level and just understanding that relationship. Also just the planning meeting for the CP Classic Committee is coming up this Thursday, March 20th at 6:30 p.m. If you're interested in volunteering or getting involved in that, please join that meeting. I actually will not be there. My daughter's performance of Into the Woods is that night. So Brian Penny will be leading and facilitating that meeting. But if anybody's interested, put that on your calendar, or
Is it just remote or is it?
it's on Zoom.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just on Zoom. So now, David, if you can just talk about the INC.
Sure.
Sure. I was gonna say, before I start talking about that too, I signed up and I got the confirmation to attend the Denver District Attorney Community Academy. That's
Okay.
also on March 29th.
So good.
So yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for your like vouching for
So
it. So I'll report back next time for that. The INC meeting, there were two kind of big things. They had board elections. And then they also had some speakers talk about affordable housing. And so they had three different speakers, like I don't remember exactly where they were all from, but things that I thought were particularly interesting. So they said that Denver needs like 44,800 units of housing in the next 10 years. I don't know where that number comes from, just
Made it up.
personally. What?
They made it up.
Right, exactly. Because I was like, I remember a couple of years ago hearing that there were like 20-some thousand empty apartment units, and then there's like 9,000 unhoused folks. So I don't know how that math is mathing, but that's just my editorializing. They talked about how a lot of times the higher the area median income, the less the shortage of housing. So, which makes sense to me. 80% of area median income for one person in Denver, which is considered low income, is $71,900. So just wanted to put that out there. The need for affordable housing continues to grow, even at higher AMI levels. They use Central Park as an example when they were talking about it, and I thought that this was interesting. Central Park is the 10th best-selling master plan community in the United States. So
Largest urban infill.
largest urban infill too. So, and then they had a slide about some questions and answers. And so I know that this has kind of come up in terms of like density and traffic. And so they talked about how affordable housing typically generates less traffic because each unit is generally rented by like a household versus unrelated roommate occupancies, each with a personal vehicle. So I thought that was kind of interesting in terms of like wanting to have more affordable housing, maybe fewer vehicles. And then also they talked about property values. So there's been no academic study that has proven a negative impact on property values. Usually results in a rise of property values actually due to multi-million-dollar investments of a building, whether it's from like the city or investors to kind of offset what might be some of the costs that would come from like market rates. So Trulia recently completed a study 2 years ago showing no negative impact on housing values. Thought that was interesting.
Is the recording for that meeting available?
I think so.
It's so difficult to navigate their
yeah.
websites.
It should.
I know.
So yeah,
So, okay, I'll make a note and include
Yes.
that. in,
yeah. It was an interesting conversation.
the
So yeah.
newsletter.
Yeah, they always.
Okay.
Is sometimes it's very rapid and then other times it's.
Okay.
The Metro District presentation too.
Well,
That's private.
please, it was such a good slide deck. Like, if you guys can,
Those.
yeah, please share it out and I'll link
Let's
to it
check with our
under the
council.
recording.
District.
So, okay, great, thank you.
We gotta talk to the lawyers about,
So I realized I should
Well,
just stop.
you
sharing.
have to make a core request, actually.
I have an account.
All right, so I think that's it for committee report outs. Brian is on a plane right now, so I'll do the treasurer's report. Basically, just it's the main cost over the past month is just the MailChimp cut. So that's the only numbers that have changed from last month. It is, oh, actually, I suppose I should share the screen just so folks can see that because I realize you're not looking at. But yeah, so our current reserve balance is $8,907. Goal is to keep 5,000 in reserve. The only expense over the last month is our MailChimp cost. All right, and so then before I unshare the screen again, just board topics, our community survey update, the next communications and outreach meeting. Related to that, our board recruitment, and then the look ahead for April. So we can kind of zoom through this, and I'm going to stop sharing the slide deck now so that, I don't know how to change that to make it more engaging, but at least so that we see some people on the screen. So, okay, community survey update and outreach needs. So I don't know if you want to run with this, Heather, since or
Sure, yeah.
go for it.
Is it okay to talk about the
Oh, of course,
incident? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
There was an incident.
There was an incident. So I think we have on there, you saw like about 1,000 valid responses. Sort of towards the end there, at the end of February, we fell prey to some sort of bot thing that was like completing the survey over and over again. So that added amount to about 300 or so. So between myself, Liz and Amanda, we're gonna look through and just verify. Most of them were like the same response.
Yeah, it's like exactly like uniform responses,
Yeah,
like, so it's
in
pretty
general.
easy to identify.
And sort of nonsensical emails. We were able to stop it, but I won't go into that. So we'll have to delete those. Then we can actually start looking at. Yeah, they were just,
I think it's just somebody's,
yeah,
Random.
yeah. So, and we'll present the results in May. What else?
yeah, just that, I think that our plan is to at least kind of have a chance to look at like
Yeah.
the survey minus the bot responses. And kind of start talking about kind of major takeaways, at the comms and outreach meeting on April 9th, which is at 7 PM.
Right. And so once we clear those out, then we can share, I think, the sort of quick stats that we get from Google Forms. You know, for each committee, the questions that you had on there.
Right.
And then I think Amanda, be kind of splitting it out for some of the questions of like north and south of 70 and maybe some
Like where there
Deeper-
needs to be like back
deeper
ends, like-
analyses, yeah. And pulling out our 2 gift card recipients, so those will be coming out soon.
Do you have anything you want to add?
No, but maybe we can do that live, like we can have like a list of people who registered and then we can like have a like jar of numbers and we can pull them out just so that it's like very transparent, like.
Turn the
Do you
We
want
do
to
a
do that?
Facebook Live.
Yeah, or you guys do next, yeah, we can talk about it.
We're not Facebook.
But yeah, so basically those are the next steps on the surveys. There's a little bit of cleanup that needs to be done, and then we'll talk about it at the April comms meeting. And then the May annual forum will include the presentation, basically the presentation on the survey results. So it was very interesting. I will say, since I used like a bit.ly specific bit.ly for the flyers that went to apartment buildings and other places in the community, we did get at least like over 80 hits on that bit.ly. So there was like,
Some traction.
there,
And we did
yeah,
that
there was,
briefly. So
yeah.
On day one, it'd be interesting. to see.
Exactly, yeah, no, so I think that it's just kind of like some lessons learned for next year.
And
just kind
timing,
of tracking,
yeah.
yeah, just making sure that when the survey is launched also that like all of those materials are ready to go. And yeah, that we kind of have like a volunteer day or something to just kind of get everything out all at the same time to the community. And also to have it in Spanish translation. So that was, I think, definitely a big thing that we want to do for next year. So, okay, we can move on to the next topic is the board recruitment update, and I can talk about like just kind of the numbers. And I mean, because it should, and then if you want to talk about the dates.
Okay.
For it. So we did have about 5 or 6 folks interested. 2 will be interviewed as part of this. 2 to 3 additional folks reached out and said they were still very interested, but life is lifing right now and they can't meet, like for various and sundry reasons, will not be able to make it to the April kind of deadline that we need to announce for May. So those seats, we will have those open board seats, and hopefully either in the later, I would say probably like by the August meeting, we'll have a couple more folks who are interested in joining the board and we'll go through the like applying and interviewing at that point. And so I think I joined in like the fall, like, so it wasn't part of the May thing, but just wanted to let folks know. And we do have 5 open board seats. So kind of with this, yeah, we'll have, so anyway, and I like have spoken to most of the folks who've expressed interest, and I think that they're all really strong candidates. So I'm excited for you guys to start talking to them.
Good. Okay, I prepared a kind of an info background sheet for the candidates that I'm gonna mail tomorrow. And I'm happy to do it with, even if people aren't applying right
Yeah.
now for this deadline.
I was gonna say, I think that
Information.
they might not have
Or
the
would that
width.
be-
I feel like that
okay,
might be
got
too
it.
much information.
Okay,
right
that's
now.
fine, that's fine. But I am gonna do that with the people who are actively available now to be interviewed. We have an ad hoc committee. David's on that committee, and Tommy and Mandel, myself, and then you'll be part of that too.
I'll
You'll
just
sit-
kind of sit in.
Right, exactly. And the meetings will, or yeah, the interviews will be recorded and all board members will have access to the interviews. And
Yeah,
we-
it's the tally, the assessments.
right, in the assessments. And I'm in the midst of refining the questions right now, trying to, there's some that are similar and can be edited so that they become one rather than three. And let's see, we've been I do backward planning as a teacher, and so I've just applied it with this as well, and starting with when do we want this over? When do we want it done? And so you threw out the date of April 17th that we will be making.
So there's like a day or two. buffer.
Exactly. So a little past mid-April to get all that in so that, and then we would need board members to raise questions or make comments or whatever at a certain date as well, mid-April. And so that I will share that with everybody, but that's been helpful for me anyway in planning all of this. And Mandel's done this a couple of times. Tommy did it last year, and we just work very well together. So I have no apprehension about this at all. It just, everybody compliments. And I think that the folks that we interviewed felt comfortable. It was great. Yeah, right? Felt comfortable. Yeah. So if you have any questions, you know where to find me.
About that timeline, don't we have to post the slate a month before?
Yeah, so that's why, so we have to post it by April 19th. So having kind of like 2 days buffer between like decided, like for the board should decide on the slate by the 17th. And then like at least have notice as a drop dead date on April 19th, I believe.
Then how does that work with our meeting in April? So that's on the 15th.
Yeah, the meeting is on the 15th. I mean, we're only interviewing 2 people, so there might be, so it's not like there's not, I think last year we had like a lot of folks. How many, it was like, we had like 7 or 8 people, I think. We had a lot, yeah. And
Want to,
I actually reached out to one, I reached out to one person who, just because we didn't have very many open seats, but like who like would, I think would be good. I've reached out and haven't received a response yet, but that's, you know, might be an option.
I'm sharing the questions with folks beforehand. Or with,
I'll have-
With the board.
with the people you're interviewing.
Oh.
Yes, yeah.
no, we didn't. Get the question out, Brand.
You didn't.
No.
I love this
Don't-
idea.
Don't get ahead of time. Don't do it.
I don't want to lead the witness, but it's worth discussing. I don't know.
No, it's helpful for accessibility purposes and I
Yeah.
think it also is.
Also, it's,
Process differently. I agree. I think I was kidding.
I just want, no,
It's a good idea.
it's a valid question and consideration, and I don't want to be flip about it. I want thoughtful responses, and I don't want to trick anybody. So,
yeah, I mean, it's not a gotcha process, so.
no.
Or suburban on time, not in advance, because then people don't feel like they have to prepare. Like, you know.
can just say you're
points
only
for
gonna have
each
3 minutes to answer each of it. You should use
Well,
anyway.
I mean,
But then-
And we did do that. We stuck with the time frame.
They're the finalists, since the list is like, I mean, like, you have a committee of people that are working on this together, but do you plan to share the questions with the board?
I'm happy.
I was gonna say, I think you
Yeah.
did last year
I did.
ahead of time, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy to.
And yeah, folks want to put in their 2 cents. All right, we're almost done. It's not even 8 o'clock yet. So really quickly, just on the welcome bags, it's once again, we've got the welcome bags. I think we need to add the CPUN postcards into there. There's 23 bags. I have the addresses. So if people can just, you know, do what we do, grab a bunch, let me know how many you have. I'll send you the email addresses. And
Question?
Sure.
The ones I did last week or last month, I think I hadn't noticed it before, but the little spreadsheet that I got had the date that they purchased. And it was like April of last year. So I literally
Yes,
was
there's
like,
a backlog of.
welcome to the neighborhood a year ago on the ring thing. It was just, I tried to make it funny. Like, sorry it took us so long.
There weren't enough properties sold in the fourth quarter to have 50, so we had to go back to earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So they just did, at that point when their property had just sold or closed a couple months before, they weren't on the list, so.
You're getting the list from, are you pulling it out of an MLS?
No, it's from MLS.
I was just, the only reason I bring this up is that I'm willing to do more if it's we just can't do enough
I
quickly
think,
enough. I was
I-
just like, that was the problem, that we have a backlog because we don't have enough people to distribute them.
I
like
think
to
there's, well, I think
sooner.
there's a question, I think it's a question of also just capacity between CPUN and CPBA.
Yeah.
Like we do about 50 a month, or like, which is like, depending on like how many units are sold in a given period of time. So what?
I never forgot a bag.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, I didn't get a bag either. But like, also.
Did you get a bag?
Prevented from doing this only because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Am I supposed to just dump it at the door and leave? Am I? supposed
Yes,
to
no,
not-
no.
Okay, am I supposed to not? Hi, welcome. I'm so and so. I'm part of. Like, am I supposed? Or I'm supposed to just leave it at
I
the
just
door?
leave it.
This is actually a very useful thing.
Yes. Yes.
Like, you just have to put the welcome bag at the
Oh,
door.
Great.
with a
Then
little
give me some.
So yeah, no,
Okay.
so
Dog or-
Okay, great.
we'll just kind of do the April look ahead and then close out the meeting
Perfect.
and then we'll do the bag stuff like
Okay.
offline.
I do not,
Okay.
but
Oh,
like
you do?
usually nobody answers.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you wait or do you just go? Oh, okay.
Loudly. Like.
Okay.
Like a mail.
I mean, it's fun, if I can hear somebody inside, I feel really appreciate being on someone's porch without like alerting them that I'm there. And so,
You haven't done lit drops for campaigns. They're
oh.
like-
Okay.
Like, that's all you have to do.
And so sometimes, and it's like, I feel like it's fulfilling when someone does answer because they're like really happy to get the bag.
That's very kind.
Yeah.
I think
I
you
like
can do
So I
like
can
to the extent that you're comfortable doing
Perfect.
that. I think
Yeah.
that,
Great.
that is very
Usually
kind.
nobody answers.
But you also don't have to do that. I am more like the bag ninja and like drop it off and get out of there. So, okay, so just really quickly, our April meeting, April 15th, 6:30 PM. Kind of thank you for setting
Yeah,
this up. Dave.
confirmed. So.
We're going to basically have a workshop on domestic violence awareness and a conversation around domestic violence. I think that is it the only homicides that have been in our neighborhood in the past few years?
No, there was
Have all,
last year.
oh, well, thank you. But
I found a
like,
dead guy.
if you like.
Found a dead guy in the stormwater tunnel, which was ruled a homicide.
Oh, that's, Jack, that's,
He got a lot of them.
okay. Well, in any case, there have been domestic violence related homicides in our community. Or in the past, 4 in the past, how many years?
2 or 3.
2, yeah. So it's an issue I think that like is very much under the radar. And so Keisha Sarpong with the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Program will be presenting at next month's meeting. So anyway, thank you to everybody who's joined us tonight. And we will see you next month.